managers take responsibility. Don't put the discounting in the hand of the sellers. And if managers show a little more discipline, then they can preserve their margins better.
Coffee's for closers only.
So we've established my proposal is sound in principle. Now we're just haggling over price.
Let's see how much we're going for on eBay.
Man, it's the same as Dunkin' Donuts. Costs 15 times the price.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Jennings Executive Search. I had a great conversation with John Jennings about the skills needed in different pricing roles. He and I think a lot alike. If you're looking for a new pricing role, or if you're trying to hire just the right pricing person, I strongly suggest you reach out to Jennings Executive Search. They specialize in placing pricing people. Say that 3 times fast. Welcome to Impact Pricing, the podcast where we discuss pricing, value, and the tight relationship between them. I'm Mark Stiving, and our guest today is Andy Paul, and here are 3 things you want to know about Andy before we start. He's the author of his new book, Sell Without Selling Out. Very interesting. He's the host of the Sales Enablement Podcast, and he's been VP of Biz Dev and VP of Sales in his previous life. Oh, and he married his high school sweetheart. Isn't that sweet? But he waited until he was 55. Welcome, Andy.
What a great introduction. Yes. We could have led with the first one. The last one first. Yes, I was very fortunate to, marry a woman that I fell in love with when I was 18 years old. Just took a while to get there.
That's pretty fascinating. So did she fall in love with you at 18?
Yeah, it was mutual. But
oh, nice.
Long story. We met right before I graduated high school, and our paths had already been dictated in terms of we were going to college, which was on opposite sides of the country. We actually met in high school in Tokyo, Japan. Another long story there, but we eventually found our way back to each other.
That is a Hallmark movie right there.
Well, it is. People keep telling me because we don't definitely continue. We consume the entire episode talking about it. People said I should write it. I don't know if I can write a sales book. I don't know if I can write a love story. So.
Right. So I normally start the interview out with the question, how did you get into pricing? But you actually are a sales expert. So let me tweak it. Yes. Let me tweak it just a little bit.
Sure.
And when did you realize pricing was important in the world of sales?
Well, right out of the gate, actually, because my first job, professional sales job, was selling large computer systems, and it was I hate to say how long ago, but at the time, interest rates were just about 20%. And so it was one thing to be able to work with the buyer to have them see the value in what we were selling, but then it was always sort of a mystery what the actual price would be because of financing costs. So we had this really tricky dance that we had to, as much sort of 2 sales as one is could we sell the customer, and 2 is could we find a financing source that where it still made sense to do the deal.
Yeah, I just saw in the news this morning that housing prices are down a lot, and that's only because interest rates are going way up. And
as someone who has 2 apartments on the market right now. Prices are soft for sure.
Yeah, I think it's time to hold those houses and just rent them. Let the rents go up with inflation.
Well, even rents have come down some. So I was reading this morning. So they'd really gone up a lot during the pandemic. We'll be fine if we can sell them. But it's sort of interesting, the timing, and people complain about interest rates. And I was, not to pull these okay boomer stories, but my mortgage on my first house was 13.5%. So
I'm glad I'm only 22.
Yeah.
I've never seen that.
So
let's jump into the topic that I really want to talk about.
Sure.
And that's this concept of selling value. First off, before we get there, I'm going to take one more aside.
Sure.
I skimmed through your latest book this morning, And I have to say, I loved it.
Oh, well, thank you.
So it's about so the title is How to Sell Without Selling Out. And it was about how to be yourself as a salesperson.
Right.
And the reason I loved it so much is because I had a job in sales really early in my career, and I was horrible. And I was doing all the things you said you're supposed to not do, right? I mean, you get the right closing lines.
That you were trained to do, right?
Oh gosh, yes. Yes. And I sucked so badly. Oh.
Well, we all do. We all do out of the gate for sure. But yeah, I mean, the dissonance arose with me very quickly. It's like, I'm either going to have a very short career or I need to find another way to do this that aligns with who I am. And that's sort of the through line in my career, is just finding what that line is and a way to bring my best version of myself to selling, not the best version of what some sales trainer thought I should be.
Yeah. Luckily you realized that early enough so that you could be successful. I didn't, and I was not. So I moved on to other things.
Well, but you're selling all the time now too. So.
Oh, and I have to say, when I look through your book and I see how you're supposed to behave, it's like, well, that's exactly what I do now. And I don't even think of it as selling. I just think of it as helping clients figure out what they need and then getting them the right solution.
Basically what it is. I mean, I define in the book is so I create this two ways of selling, basically selling out and selling in. Selling out, the pushy, persuasive, putting your own interests before those of the buyer. And I say, sales, you have to think about it. Your job as a salesperson is really nothing more than listening to your buyer, understanding the things that are most important to them in terms of challenges they face and the outcomes they want to achieve by addressing those challenges, and then helping them get that. That's your job. Listen and help.
So I think that, by the way, I think that's absolutely spot on right. But if I look back in my history or my career, I would say I only figured that out after I didn't have to close the sale. Right. So once I got to the point where it's like, I don't need this business, it's totally okay if you go somewhere else. Then I don't have to try to be persuasive. I can simply describe what the situation is and help them out if I can.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of truth to that. I think, part for me, it was, I just didn't have it in me to be hugely salesy. But part was just, a confidence. If you help people, you have to show up from a level of service, you ask great questions. And again, I discovered this fairly early on in my career is selling computer systems into the construction industry. I was, fresh out of college. I looked 12 years old. I was meeting with CEOs and founders of companies. And I was always like, well, why are they giving me their time, let alone giving me orders? And it was just because I was showing up authentically, sincerely interested in them. I wanted to learn. This was like my MBA. I was talking to all these business owners and business founders. And if I just sat there and asked great questions, they would spend as much time practically as I wanted to help educate me about how to help them. And I was like, oh, well, this works.
And if I could summarize what you just said, I would summarize it with the two words, genuine curiosity.
Yes.
Right.
I like to add sometimes engaged curiosity.
Okay. Engaged curiosity. Yeah. And so now my favorite topic, I love pricing. Don't get me wrong, right? I mean, dearly love it. And when I think about pricing, I always come back to what's a customer willing to pay. That always comes back to value, right? How much value are they getting from the product? And then when we as pricing people realize, customers are getting $1 million of value, we should charge $100K or whatever the number is. Are salespeople able to communicate that value to our customers? And I think it really comes back to those questions that you were talking about before and the structured process that you used. So talk to me how you would get a salesperson or how you would get to communicate value to a customer.
Yeah. And some of this I sort of understood by looking back on it, right? And looking at the experience. But Yeah, I've not entirely, but spent, most of my career in the tech business. And there's been sort of one thing that's been sort of largely true in the spaces I sold is, and it's more pronounced now, I think you and I touched on this when you were on my show, is that in the mind's eye of the customer, most products are basically alike. And the pricing is basically the same, right? Just, talking in sort of broad terms here, right? And their calculation of value they're going to get from it, if the products are largely identical in functionality, and this is very pronounced today, and largely the same in pricing, then, hey, the value calculation is going to be largely the same. So in the book, I take a little bit different spin on value, which is not to diminish the value you talk about at all, but is to say there is another important source of value for buyers as they go through their process is, are you helping me make this decision that I need to make? And how you do that has value to me as an individual, as an organization. And so I talk about in this book is that for buyers, if buyers look at their job as, I need to quickly gather and make sense of information, this information I need to make an informed decision with the least investment of my time, attention, and resources possible, right? Because enterprises makes any organization is going to make a decision to purchase something and bring groups of stakeholders together from various departments. This is not their job, right? Not their day job. It's the job to bring them together. And do they want to spend a year to make a decision they could make in 6 months if the seller enabled them to be able to do that? And so, I talk about as various forms of value, but one for buyer that is important and that we know from research actually is fairly influential in their ultimate decision is the value of their experience working with the individual seller. In the Challenger sale, they talk about 53% of the buyer's decisions based on this experience, this buying experience with the individual seller.
Yes.
And so whether that number is 53% or 48% or whatever, there's multiple sources of research that say, hey, this is a critical thing for buyers when they make their decision. There's a company in Australia called Trinity Perspectives, a consulting firm, done a ton of win-loss analyses around the world with enterprises. It's in-person, face-to-face, not just survey-based, where they're getting into the deep knowledge. And they recently summarized all their findings that they've heard over a decade of doing this work into sort of the 9 reasons why you win big deals and 9 reasons why you lose big deals. And pricing showed up once as a factor. Functionality didn't show up at all. And most of the reasons they cited for making decisions to give a piece of business to a company or not really boiled down to this human element, this experience they had with the sellers. And so, not to get sidetracked, but what I talk about in the book is for buyers, within the context of the buying experience, for them, value is progress. Meaning, as a result of me spending my time with you in any sort of sales interaction, am I now closer to making a decision as a result of that interaction than I was before? And if I'm not, then there was no value in that interaction for me.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with your point because I think it's probably right, but I want to layer on top of it my perception of what you said.
Sure. Go ahead.
Because my perception is, if as a salesperson, you go in and you help the client move the decision forward. And to me, by the way, that means understanding what their problems are, what they're trying to get to. So this is all about value anyway.
Yep.
But it's about product value or economic value that we're going to deliver to the customer.
Within that conversation, absolutely, yes.
Absolutely. And so from my perspective, I think the salesperson who can do that well and first actually builds the trust with the customer that says, oh, you understand my problems. It's likely that you can solve my problems.
Yes.
And so if I take someone else, they may not understand my problems the way you do. I trust you. I don't know that they know those problems.
Oh,
so I'm not.
Yeah.
So I didn't account it to you move the ball forward. I accounted it to the trust that you truly know what I need and can help me solve it.
But I agree. But that does move the ball forward for them. And I can't remember if we touched on this when you were on my show, but there's a body of research into decision-making that says, if you can be that first to trust, if you can be the first to make the buyer feel understood, right? Like you really, there's serious milestones happening so you can actually put yourself in the pole position and win the deal at a higher frequency than your competitors. Forrester put it like 60% chance if you're the first to this vision of success, the buying vision for the buyer. But you don't get there without, to your point, having built the trust first and having them make them feel understood. And I talk about in the book is, numerous occasions where I was selling for startups, selling large mission critical, multi-million-dollar communications networks against really big competitors, and always sort of bemused when we won. And it was like, well, why do we win? And customers say, well, because you're the only one that made me feel understood. Like you really understood what we were trying to do. And that has, that's a source of some sort of value to the buyer.
Yeah, I agree completely. I agree 100% with that. It doesn't move my conversation forward, but I agree with it. So from my perspective, inside that conversation that says, hey, I understand your problems. Here's the results you're going to get when you solve your problems. And right. So it's us working through that with them. To me, that's helping the buyer understand the value of my product, helping them get faith that my product is going to deliver a lot of value to them.
Sure. But the path runs through you as the individual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's really what we're dealing with in my book is that, and I think Gartner had some research that came out about 10 years ago about this is enterprise surveys of enterprise buyers about trust. And the results of the survey was that the buyer said, well, that the most important level of trust we have is with the individual seller before their company. And so, the path to being able to have, a substantive conversation with someone about, the requirements and make sure you understand them and be able to present value and pricing, as you talk about, and influence their ultimate choice goes through the individual.
Okay. So why don't salespeople do this?
Because, for how long do we have? Part of it is just falls down to training. But even let's take it a step further, is I think that there's just sort of this general socialization of people in this world to think this is a way salespeople act a certain way. And if you're in sales, you're going to act a certain way, whether that's through movies, TV shows, things they've read, family members, whatever. And so we still struggling with just that basic idea that if you're in sales, you have to act a certain way, which is false. And then you get the training aspect of it, which basically increasingly these days encourages sellers to sort of say, look, this is sort of a cookie cutter process driven approach we use. If you just do enough of this stuff, you're going to win enough deals. And it's really sort of removed, the human element out of the business. And what the buyers are saying is, the more automated you become in your selling processes and the more automated you become in your interactions with me, the more faceless and valueless they become. The point of differentiation is the interaction with the human seller that can make the difference, that can be the standout, that really understand what we're doing, has empathy, true empathy for what we're trying to achieve. And ironically, I think that's become more your ability to become, there's a great book written by Jeffrey Colvin called Humans Are Underrated. He had also written the bestseller Talent is Overrated. But a really interesting book, Humans Are Underrated, about the future of work and employment. And based on his conversation with all these experts in the field and people researching, he said, interesting. It seems like the key skill for people moving forward is the ability to become more intensely human, right? Where humanity becomes a differentiator and all the automated buying experiences start to become more similar. How do you stand apart being human?
And as you were talking, and I'm applying this to your book, it seems like automated selling sequences, almost by definition, are persuasion, right?
Yeah.
Which is a bad word in your book, right?
Yeah. Not the desired state. Yeah. You want to be influential as opposed to persuasive. Yes.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting you bring up that one because there's just inklings we're hearing a little bit about companies now starting to say, maybe carpet bombing our prospect base with unending sequences of emails isn't the right thing to do. Maybe we should try to become, more human again. And, I think one of the biggest oxymorons that exist in sales is, mass personalization at scale. And yet I hear people talk about it all the time. There was some big company recently, I can't remember the name, somebody just had mentioned to me, has told their sales team, you can't use sequences anymore. If you're going to send an email, you have to write it. And I think, whoa, right? Inkling of change. Doesn't mean there isn't a place for sequences, but just do them as a de facto way of operation. Yeah, I don't think that it's served anybody's interests.
Yeah, and I would almost say let the marketing folks do the sequences.
Yeah.
Salespeople, your job is to have one-on-one relationships.
Well, I would agree. But yeah, I mean, relationships is such a loaded word these days in sales. It's like, there's a whole cadre of people out there sort of shouting from the rooftops, your buyers don't want relationships. And it's like, you guys don't really have a really nuanced understanding of the word relationship, do you? It's like,
right. And even if you took the word relationship out, it's really a one-on-one conversation. It's, every buyer is different. Every buyer needs different information. They have different problems. And so salespeople's job is to help individual buyers figure out how much value there is.
Well, yeah. And you use the key term there, which is everybody's different. The way sellers are trained today is everybody's the same, right? So if we go and ask these scripted questions to these prospects, we're going to get these answers. And as I write about in the book as well, sure, you can do that. What do you have? You've got a collection of information, but you have no context for it. You don't understand what's important to the buyer and why. It's because you're treating them all the same.
Yeah.
And, when salespeople think about having any sort of business acumen or sales acumen, the acumen isn't from being able to recognize how two situations are the same. It comes from being able to recognize how they're different and to be able to operate differently. When you spot those differences and ask different questions and lead the customer perhaps down a different path, that's what creates consistently good salespeople, not treating everybody the same.
Okay, so let me take a 90-degree turn in our conversation for a second.
Sure.
If we've got customers and buyers who are all different, and I have salespeople who are talking to them, different buyers get different amounts of value, economic value from our product.
Right.
How do you recommend salespeople deal with, I'll call it price segmentation. You can call it negotiation.
Well, yeah, I've got various. Yeah, I come from more of a selling complex systems type background, and a very specific view on how you quote unquote negotiate, which is that you sort of don't. Is that you negotiate through how you sell. You negotiate through how you structure the deal, meaning that your goal as a seller is to be able to present to procurement or legal or whatever a package that they can't pick apart because you've got such solid buy-in from the business units and economic buyers and so on that you've been dealing with. And I equate it to like a big Jenga tower, right? That if somebody tries to pull one of the pieces out, the whole thing's going to collapse. And so the way to sort of start that is to approach everything with the buyer as a series of trade-offs. Is, hey, you can have, delivery now or delivery in 2 months, right? Delivery now might be priced a little bit more. We've got to expedite certain things in 2 months, a little less. Oh no, we need now because we need to hit our timeframes. Okay. And as you are selling, you're recording all these and getting their agreement and building this package. And it's not negotiating. It's trade-offs, and you're helping the customer come. So these series of trade-offs are enable us to achieve success at the level we want and get the value and the ROI we want from the economic value from the investment we're making. And then you present that to procurement. Procurement says, well, we need 10% off the price. You say, oh, okay, we could do that. But the trade-off is that, deliveries can be slower, and we may have to descope the product or the project this amount in these areas and so on. But hey, let's talk to the guy that owns the economic decision maker. Let's see if that's okay with them. And then every time it's set up that way because they had made the choices leading up to it. And so then when you get with procurement, it's like, trying to touch a porcupine. It's because everything is loaded. And I found from negotiating, 7, 8, even 9-figure deals, take that approach. Doesn't mean you're not going to be vulnerable in some cases, but you can protect yourself as much as possible against it. And you have the support of your internal customers.
My least favorite procurement experience. I was an employee at a company. I was on the committee to help choose a multi-million-dollar software package.
Done that once.
We had chosen the vendor, and I got to go to the first meeting between the vendor and procurement. And I am not joking. I heard procurement say the words, we're looking at 2 other vendors and you're about 30% higher. You need to lower your price. Now, I knew for a fact that was a lie.
Yes.
Right?
And as a seller, if you're hearing procurement say that, and if you don't know for a fact that it's a lie, then you haven't been doing your job, because you wouldn't have gotten to procurement. They're not talking to 3 people. They don't negotiate 3 vendors simultaneously. They're not going to waste their time doing that. Procurement's talking to 1 vendor. So you just know de facto. That's just bullshit. So, yeah. I mean, there's one-upsmanship. I mean, there's another thing that companies don't do enough of when it comes to negotiation is just get the salespeople out of the way. And this one, a lesson I learned early on. I was at a startup, and their background is they'd come from the defense side of the world, and all the contracts were, they had a contracts department. It was led by an attorney. And I had always, to that time, taken pride. I'd negotiated my own deals, some big deals, and so on. And I was like sort of resistant to it. And that's like, I saw the guy in action. I was like, oh no, this is great. Yeah. We got to the buyer's point, said, yeah, we want to do business with you. We're going to send this deal to procurement, legal. Yeah, get salespeople out of the way. Don't let salespeople do that. Have professional contract negotiators handle negotiations. Takes the emotion out of it. You end up getting better deals. It's nerve-wracking as a salesperson to watch somebody else do that to your baby that you put together. But in my experiences, you have much higher success rate in the long run.
Yeah, and if you think about it, procurement, any given procurement agent negotiates way more deals than any single salesperson does.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and salespeople, they know how to negotiate price, and that's about it, right? So, yeah, you're just assuming they're going to give the money away. And it's nice you sort of take that out of the salesperson's hand. You find out, oh, yeah. We start selling higher margin deals. And the customer's happy. And yeah, a lot of myths about negotiation for sellers. And that's, I said, in general, you're best served to get them out of the way.
Andy, we are running out of time, and we have exceeded time, so we're not going to play pricing table topics. You are in luck. You are in luck.
I'm in luck. Well, thank you.
But I am going to...
Though I do recommend anybody listening, if you haven't experienced Toastmasters, where the table topics come up, you should do it. I did it for about a year. Really enjoyed it, and I recommend it to entry-level salespeople or anybody that's going to get into public speaking, whether it's internal public speaking or external. Yeah, Toastmasters. I
was a 10-year Toastmaster.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, dearly love the organization. Absolutely phenomenal.
But you just have to make sure you find the group that fits you. It didn't really click for me in terms of sort of like the third group I went to. Because, they have personality and people have been there for, as I said, yourself for a long time. And they have certain ways of doing things. And once you find a group that you really click with, it is a tremendous amount of fun.
Yep, absolutely. But I am going to ask you the final question.
Sure.
Final question is, what's one piece of pricing advice you would give our listeners that you think could have a big impact on their business?
Don't let salespeople negotiate. Well, and so, my theory about discounting, everybody wants to point the finger at salespeople as to be the blame for discounting. And the fault is really managers. It's not salespeople. And I tell people the way to look at it is if you were running a car dealership and you're getting toward the end of the month and you've got too many unsold cars on the lot, what do? The manager says, let's start discounting them because he has a surplus of inventory. Well, it's true in any other field, software, hardware, whatever you're selling, is if you have a surplus of unmet quota as you face the end of the month, managers start discounting to get the inventory of unmet quota cleared off their books. So it's the same dynamic. Managers take responsibility. Don't put the discounting in the hand of the sellers. And if managers show a little more discipline, then they can preserve their margins better.
So I'll agree you don't put all of the blame on the seller, on the salesperson, but they also have a lot of incentive to discount their closed deals. So here's my favorite saying. I want to hear your opinion on this one.
Sure.
Never let a CEO negotiate.
Oh, well, yes. I've had some bad experiences with that. Watching some of my commission disappear. Yes.
Yes, I say that because CEOs are powerful. They will get the deal done, and they're not patient.
Yeah, and they don't care about your commission.
Right.
Yeah, it depends. I've had, like I said, a couple bad experiences with CEOs that sort of gave the farm away when it's like, you didn't really need to do that. We're going to close the deal anyway. But they wanted to show that they were in charge and got a discount. But it's like everything. You involve your CEO in a deal. They have to be briefed. They have to be given directions. This is your remit for this call. Stick within the boundaries of what I say.
Yeah. And so your real answer to the question I asked was hire a professional negotiator.
Yeah. Have a contracts department. Yeah. If you're a SaaS business, you've got tons of contracts and you're assuming that your success team is sort of managing all the details of that, which they're not. And contracts team is really, really excellent at contract renewals. I mean, it's people just, the software world just isn't paying attention the way that, companies have done business successfully for years in this regard.
Nice. Andy, this has just been fascinating. I love talking to you.
Likewise.
If anybody wants to contact you, how can they do that?
You can start at LinkedIn, connect and message with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest these days. And you can always email me at andy@andypaul.com. Visit my website, andypaul.com, learn more about my book, Sell Without Selling Out. You can buy that anywhere books are sold. You can download a free chapter on the website as well.
All right. And we'll have the link to your LinkedIn URL on the show notes.
Okay, perfect.
And believe it or not, this was episode 200.
Yay. Congratulations to you. That's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I think this is going to be the last one we number, though. So from now on, there's no more numbering.
Oh, why?
I'll explain after the show.
Okay. All right.
But to our audience, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, would you please leave us a rating and a review? The easiest way is to go to ratethispodcast.com/impact pricing. Once again, I have no idea why everybody makes it hard to rate a podcast. So go to ratethispodcast.com/impact pricing. They will hold your hand.
Nice.
And finally, if you have any questions or comments about the podcast or pricing in general, feel free to email me, mark@impactpricing.com. Now, go make an impact. Thanks again to Jennings Executive Search for sponsoring our podcast. If you're looking to hire someone in pricing, I suggest you contact someone who knows pricing people. Contact Jennings Executive Search.